Thanks, Harry. Beautiful.
Harry, let's go.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Good Shabbos. Good Shabbos. Love is in the air on this Shabbat. At least according to the Jewish calendar, many know that this is the Shabbat that coincides with Tu B'Av, the lesser known but still fascinating day on our calendar. It's called in Israel Yom HaAhava, the day of love. American Jews, many not knowing how to refer to this day, call it the Jewish Valentine's Day. But to me, it's not really a great fit because Tu B'Av is so much deeper than that. It's about so much more than Hallmark cards and roses and chocolates, though those things are always welcome. But it's about us, our history, our values, our future. And it comes now at this point in the season, at this point in the year, largely because of what came last week, because of Tisha B'Av, which was just last Shabbat, many know, the saddest day on our calendar. The culmination of that summer period of mourning and lament. We refrain from celebration. We refrain from festivities. We refrain from weddings. That period comes to an end. We end the fast on Tisha B'Av. We break it, and immediately a week later, here we are, going to the other extreme on Tu B'Av, getting up from that mourning in this very beautiful, symbolic way. We go as far as we can in the opposite direction. And we celebrate on this Shabbat love and connection and renewal. And those 2 days are held in parallel. On Tisha B'Av, we thought about Sinat Chinam, right? What is Sinat Chinam? Baseless hatred. That's what led to the destruction of the temple, our sages said. And now we ask on this Shabbat, well, what about Ahavat Chinam? Is there a place for love without condition? Is there a place for civility, for respect, for genuine warmth? Can that come into the picture in this world in a way that it just hasn't? Can it be a force that heals the brokenness of the temple that we mourn for and that heals our world? And we're left today with a real challenge. We're left with the challenge of holding that ideal in a very real world, because we're supposed to feel ahava on Tu B'Av. We're supposed to know that love is in the air, and yet we look around at our world, we look at the Jewish news, and it's much more of last week. It's much more of Sinat Chinam. It's much more of division and hatred without reason. And the reason I bring it up is really because of 2 items in the news that caught my attention this week. The Ben & Jerry's scandal, I will get to at the end. That's there too, but not what I want to speak about really this morning. 2 items in the Jewish news. First, in Israel. And this news was completely overshadowed, I think, through the week by the Ben & Jerry's scandal. More on that. But what happened in Israel at the Kotel on the night of Tisha B'Av? Anybody know? Oh my gosh. Well, you have to know first, 2 sections of the Kotel, right? We have the traditional section of the Western Wall that's with the mechitza dividing between men and women. That's the traditional section we've all seen. But there is another section, I hope you know. It's a section that's been designated for egalitarian prayer. Men and women joining together. There is no mechitza, conservative, reform. Anyone who wants to be there can pray in the way they like to, freely, openly, worship as they are comfortable, and that's designated as that type of spot. Robinson's Arch, it's called. Beautiful place to pray. I've done it many times. What happens this year? Saturday night, Tisha B'Av rolls around. Last week, conservative minyan is there. They're Jews who I think we would feel comfortable praying with. They're having a gathering very similar to the one we had, coming together to read Eicha, to read from Lamentations, men and women together, they find waiting for them at Robinson's Arch not anti-Semites, not Palestinians, but Jews. Jewish protesters waiting at that spot that's supposed to be their designated place to pray freely, waiting there, a crowd of yeshiva guys, Haredim, ultra-Orthodox Jews, and they're holding off the entrance, and they're singing loudly, but really what they're doing is jeering and disrupting and embarrassing and shaming, and it's just making it impossible for this group to pray, to be Jews in the way that they are. Why does it matter? You've heard of things like this before, right? Why does it matter that this headline shouldn't get overshadowed, that it should be spoken about from the Bima? Well, you have to realize the tragic irony of that picture. That on that day in particular, that's the one day, Tisha B'Av, when our sages said thousands of years ago, it's sinat chinam, it's hatred without reason that's destroying us as a people. It's hatred between Jews that's the problem, that puts us in a position of weakness when so many are against us. Thousands of years later, at that very spot, on that very day, you have Jews at that very same place, showing us what sinat chinam looks like in real time, reenacting it, I guess you might say. I don't like the way you express your Judaism. Your Judaism is different from mine. Therefore, it's not legitimate. Get out. You have no place with a kippah on, is the message. And Rakefet Ginsburg, she's the head of the conservative movement in Israel, she said something very poignant. The book of Lamentations, she said, didn't really need to be read on that evening at the Kotel. You could have seen it with your own eyes. That's news item number one I wanted to share with you. And I tell it, and you might think wrongly that what I'm saying is meant to disparage ultra-Orthodox Jews, to disparage Haredi Jews. That's not where I'm coming from at all. Do not think I'm going there. Because if Tu B'Av is to teach us anything, to give us any message, it's that you don't counteract sinat chinam. You don't push against baseless hatred with more baseless hatred. And that brings me to news item number 2. Now, some of you have heard of this TV show that has simply gone viral on Netflix. It was among the most watched on Netflix just last week, My Unorthodox Life. People heard of this show? It's a reality show. It's actually very similar in premise to another show that was popular on Netflix a few months ago, Unorthodox, which many of you did see. I hope. It seems to be a trend on Netflix these days to present Orthodox Judaism in a negative light. So it's a show. I'll tell you about it a little bit. It tells the story of a woman named Julia Hart, who's a woman who left, or maybe as she would say on the show, escaped the ultra-Orthodox community. She escaped Muncie. She made it out with her life to realize her dream of becoming this fashion mogul. She's brilliant. She goes on to become the CEO of Elite World Group, which is one of the biggest talent agencies in the world. And the show documents just how great her life is now. Her lavish, wonderful lifestyle now that she's no longer Orthodox. And some in the Jewish world will call it a wonderful celebration of her freedom. How great it is that she escaped, so to speak. But for me, it's a little more complicated than that. Because even if, as liberal Jews, as conservative Jews, we have our differences, our very stark differences with the Haredi, with the ultra-Orthodox world, even if they're going to protest us at Robinson's Arch, even if they'll call me not a rabbi, or say certainly to my wife, you're not a rabbi, and that is offensive, still, with all the strength that we have to stand up for who we are as conservative Jews, I think we have to know what it means to stand up for a fellow Jew when a Jewish person is being disparaged in the media. It doesn't matter who they are, if they have a black hat or not. We stand together. And this show, in really not a very subtle way, is bashing Haredi, bashing traditional Judaism. It's shallow. It views Orthodox Judaism as antiquated, as overly extreme, perhaps as oppressive. It paints what is one legitimate and in some ways very beautiful way of being Jewish as a negative. And it's disrespectful, bordering on, you might say, anti-Semitic, or at the very least, giving fuel to anti-Semites who want that fuel. That we shouldn't let slide either. I think what our sages meant when they put Tisha B'Av and Tu B'Av side by side, when they showed us what baseless hatred looks like, and they put that next to an ideal of civility and open-mindedness and strength but understanding too, they sent us a message the Jewish world needs to hear this season. Our temple is destroyed. And that's a necessary reminder of what happens when Jews mistreat other Jews and disparage other Jews. And that wall that we pray at, well, that reminds us too. What happens when we put up walls between Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, Open Orthodox, Haredi, Chabad, when we put up walls that are too high? We need that reminder because we have, and you all know it, because you all check the news as much as I do, I hope, the Jewish news, way too many enemies to spend even the tiniest bit of energy caricaturing each other, belittling each other, downplaying the legitimacy of other Jewish groups, to say, you're not Jewish enough, you're not Jewish in the right way, or you're too Jewish and it's extreme and that's a problem, be less Jewish, which some say. Because to an anti-Semite, doesn't matter if you have on a rainbow yarmulke or a black hat and tzitzit. It doesn't matter to them if you come from a rabbinic dynasty in Jerusalem or if you just converted yesterday. They don't care. So we better. We're not going to agree, ever, on the best way to be Jewish. We're Jews, we don't agree. There's no question. But in a world where too many, and Ben and Jerry's, God forbid now, other companies are going to jump on this bandwagon that they're on, I hope not, want to push us down with everything they have, how can we not hear the message of Tu B'Av and know what it means to lift each other up and stand together as a people? Does it pain me that these Haredi Jews had nothing better to do on Tisha B'Av than stand around and disrupt a service? Of course. I hope they go back to the yeshiva and do some real soul searching. Does it pain me that the Jewish producers of My Unorthodox Life are happy to make a buck disparaging the Orthodox community? Yeah. I hope they go back to their mansions in California and do some soul searching too. Because after 2,000 years plus of Tisha B'Av in this world, we're ready for a little more Tu B'Av. I think we need it. So may this Tu B'Av for all of us serve as a balm to heal what is broken in our world, but in our relationships between each other as Jewish movements, may we know what our ancestors knew at Sinai, which we recounted in the Parsha this week, that each and every one of us receives Torah a little bit differently and lives Torah a little bit differently. That is certainly true, but it's our Torah. So like the wall, may we stand proud for the Judaism we personally cherish, but more importantly, let's stand proud for one another as an Am Echad, as a people united, with many expressions of one single mission, to bring a little more ahava, a little more civility, and a little more love into this world. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Okay, what a delight to call upon Kaylee to lead us in Musaf as we move toward Musaf in our concluding prayers. Page 184, we'll chant Chatzi Kaddish, the Musaf Amidah.